You're listening to the Murphology Podcast. Thanks for tuning into the Murphology Podcast, aka Murph here to share interviews about biking experiences from cyclists who have pedaled to places all over. Each week, we'll get to know new people and explore new destinations to ride your bike. As you listen to these adventures, you may wonder, why haven't I done that yet? On the show today is J.D. Schaefer. J.D. is an endurance junkie who has done ultra runs and even hiked the entire Appalachian Trail. Last summer, he was able to save up money and get some time off work. The plan was to hike the PCT, but an injury caused him to have to pivot from hiking to something else. Since he still had the time off, in a matter of a few weeks, he found an old bike and decided to bike across the country by himself. It was August 31st when the group that I was biking with ran into him one night in Confluence when he was just a few days from completing his journey. Today, JD shares the story of his adventure riding his first long-distance bicycle tour on the Trans-America bike route. Okay, well, on the show today, we have JD. Hey, JD.
What's up?
How are you doing?
Great. How are you?
Good. So, listeners, this is a pretty funny story, but if you recall, I did a bike adventure last fall where we did the Gap Trail and the C&O Trail, and we were in, JD, you'll have to help me out. I don't recall what town we were in. Do you recall?
It was Confluence, Pennsylvania.
Okay, Confluence. So we ended up, my crew rented like an Airbnb and we got in really late. It was already dark and we couldn't find a convenience store. There were no restaurants, nothing. And then somehow one of our members of the crew just got on their bike and tried to ride around town, and they found this, I don't even think there was a sign on the front of this building, but it was like a really dingy, dark bar slash maybe kind of a hotel. I'm not sure, but I do remember there were way more ashtrays than seating. And we all got pretty comfortable, had a few drinks. They ended up opening they're opening back up their grill. So we all had our fill in greasy bar food. In walks JD. And you were, I don't know, frazzled isn't the right word, but you walk in and you're kind of like, I have had one hell of a day. And so somebody bought you a drink, and then we learned that you were just completing your cross-country solo adventure, right?
Yeah. I was 3-4 days out from finishing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So then, of course, we all had to hear your story and we wanted to hear your story, and you probably just wanted to go to bed. But I appreciate that you took the time to talk to all of us. And now here we are a couple months later, we get to tell the world your story.
Yeah. Wow. That's a big way of putting it. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. That was like one of the highlights of my trip, was meeting you guys, and that whole day was just so crazy.
Yeah. And if I remember, think back to my crew, we are more recreational riders, and we're in it for the entertainment and the socializing and the photographs and of course the biking too. But we had probably biked, I don't know, maybe 50 miles that day, stopped at almost every town, had drinks all along the way. And then I think that day, you had done well over 100 miles. Is that correct?
Yeah. In fact, it was the biggest day of my whole trip. I did 153 miles that
Whoa.
day.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into talking about this solo bike trip across the United States. Like, have you done it multiple times, or how did you decide that I'm going to do a bike ride across the U.S.?
Well, no, this was my first ever big bike trip. Like, I've never been camping on a bike. Probably the first I've ever ridden on a bike was 50 miles before this point.
What? Really?
Yeah. Like in Scouts or something. I don't know. I mean, I mountain biked a little bit and just like rode my bike recreationally, like as a commute to and from school and stuff, but nothing major. But no, I did have like some sort of like outdoor resume up to that point. My biggest thing was long distance backpacking through hiking. So
okay.
So in 2018, I hiked the entire Appalachian Trail in between semesters at school, and that was because my dad he's a geography professor, and he's just super into backpacking, camping, and we grew up going on road trips. And like by the time I was like 18, I had seen like over 40 of the states in the United States. And so like I had just like this mentality, or not, or just like this way of like planning trips. I was always like, got to fit in hiking and
Yeah.
camping. And so yeah, so originally before I had decided to go on the bike tour, the plan was to hike the PCT, actually, my next big hike,
Mm.
the Pacific Crest Trail. And so I was preparing for that hike. Like I had the permit and everything, got the gear and everything, like upgraded, ready to go on that big fun hike, and I was super excited. But I accidentally bummed my knee and ankle during a training run, and it just really kind of. I mean, I still prepped and left for the hike, but I guess like I hope for the best, but I ended up not starting that hike
Oh, yeah.
because just like that injury was too bad. Well, so I had gotten this summer off from work, and I work remotely. I live in New York City. I work remote though.
Hmm.
Like I got the summer off from my employer, and which was awesome. They were like, "Yeah, take 3 4 months off and come back whenever you're ready. We'll have work for
Wow.
you." So that was great. And so I left the city, and I had like a few weeks of family reunions during the summer before I decided like my trip started, like when I was planning on hiking the PCT.
Hmm.
And I used that time to test the injury and try running on it and see how it felt, and it just was not getting any better, and it was super discouraging. So I was really not wanting to give up on like this summer that I had planned. I had all this
Right.
time off. I didn't want to like, miss this opportunity. And so I said, "Hey, let's just pivot and do something that doesn't hurt my knee or my ankle." And I went on bike rides, and that felt really good. And then in the back of my head, like just like in the list of adventures that I've wanted to do I mean, the list is big, and I just was like, which one of those are on a bike? And one of them was to bike across America. And I had like read about the Trans Am route before, and was super intrigued. And like had read about bike packing and how similar it seemed to through hiking. And I was just like really into that concept of, long distance travel by myself.
Hmm.
Um, and I loved the endurance aspect of it. Like the way I hiked was very similar to how I biked. I'll get into it, but like I mean, I loved the social scene and everything, but I was really into it to test myself and to see how far I could go, and
Oh,
like
wow. Yeah.
and just like kind of like the athletic pursuit of it, which I really enjoyed.
Hmm.
So anyway, I mean, I was like, you know what? I called my girlfriend, and I was like, I think I'm going to bike across the country instead. And she was like, what? But then and my parents were like, wow, okay, like sure, we support that. And they let me crash at their place in Utah for a little bit so I could just like prepare for a couple more weeks. And so in the span of like 2 3 weeks, I bought all my bike bags. I went on a few training rides, um, remembered how to change a tire,
Hmm.
and or just like practice that. And I was stoked about the idea of biking across the country. I was like, at this point, I was already actually missing my girlfriend a ton. And so the concept of being able to possibly shave off an entire month of this adventure. So like hiking the PCT would have taken me like anywhere from 3 to 4 months, but
Hmm.
I I was hoping like, oh, I bet I could bike across the country in like 6 to 8 weeks, or something like way shorter, so like 2 months tops. And that was really encouraging. I'm like, oh, I can still do this really big adventure, but then
Hmm.
I'll be home, and just have another fun adventure in the books. So yeah, that was it. And
So literally, you, because of an injury, you totally pivoted from this is the adventure I'm going to do, which has to do with hiking, to what can I do that won't, make my injury worse? And biking popped up, and boom, you are now getting ready to bike across the United States.
yeah, and
Oh, wow.
I was certainly naive. I thought it was just gonna be like, just like, oh, it's just like hiking but on a bike. And so I like threw all my backpacking gear in all my new bike bags that I bought, and just like with a pump and some bike tools and stuff. But then
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, yeah, there's this route, the Trans Am route. So I was like, yeah, I guess that's what I'll do. And I started, and my dad was like, I'll drive you up to Oregon. I'm like, great. And that was kind of that.
Wow. And I don't know at what point you want to speak to this, but by the time that we saw you, you were less than a week to the end of your journey, and you were packing extremely light. Like, I don't recall that you had much more than the clothes on your back. A quick interruption to tell you this week's podcast is sponsored by Lizard Lips Lip Balm. These great lip balms contain natural ingredients, come in a variety of flavors, and you can choose certified organic or balms with sun protection. Check it out at lizardlips.net. Now back to the show.
it was pretty, yeah, it was I didn't have a lot of gear. It did come back to bite me.
Oh yeah.
But in other regards, I was like really happy with my small setup.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll speak about that later for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So you said at least you started by following the Transamerica route. Can you give us some highlights of maybe like the mileage? You mentioned you start in Oregon. Just like give us some highlights of what that route was like for you.
The Trans Am route or the route that I ended up going on?
The route that you ended up going on.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I started on the Trans Am route, and again, coming from hiking, I mean, you pick the trail that you're gonna go on, and then you can't really deviate it because it's like a trail in the forest.
Oh, right. Yep.
And so I just had this mentality, like, yep, I'm gonna start the Trans Am route, and I'm gonna finish at the end of the Trans Am route. And so I was ready to just go the distance, of the Trans Am route, not cut any corners, and just do that. And it's like. So it starts in Astoria, Oregon, on the beautiful Oregon coast. It's amazing, and it ends in Yorktown, Virginia. And that always kind of bothered me. It's like, oh, you don't even end on like in the Atlantic Ocean. You kind of end, I think it's like Chesapeake Bay or something.
Because I was going to ask you. I'm assuming that you're doing ocean to ocean, but
yeah,
now I know.
Yeah. So it ends in the York River specifically. And then I'm just like, okay, yeah. No, so yeah, my whole concept was like, yeah, I kind of wanted to, that's what defined cross country was ocean to ocean. Mm-hmm. And I had this mind's eye or just like this image in my mind about, I had some acquaintances who had done it before, and, you just see the pictures of them in one ocean and then the other ocean. Yeah. It's like, wow, they totally crossed the entire country on their bicycle. And so, but I ended up changing my route quite a few times, and I'm really glad I did. So I started on the Trans Am, went down the Oregon coast, had a great time. And then as I was getting into Idaho, the wildfires this past summer were really bad, and smoke was starting to catch up with a lot of people. And I met a lot of people who did the entire Trans Am finishing westbound. And I was still, in Eastern Oregon. And they were telling me left and right, like, hey, the smoke is terrible in Montana. Like, don't even try to go into Missoula. Like, just this, and that. Like, you will, like, we all rerouted. I'd encourage you to think about rerouting for your own safety kind of thing. And so that gave me something to think about. And then I had heard kind of like some discouraging stuff about the Trans Am, like, oh, if you stay on the Trans Am, you're going to go through Kentucky and all these kind of seedy places in Missouri, and you're not, and like, they're a little unhinged. Like, there's a lot of bad dogs and
okay.
And so I just like heard some discouraging stuff about it. I mean, I know tons of people have had amazing experiences on the entire route, but I ended up deciding to reroute a little bit and kind of forge my own path, and that was a new concept for me. Like, that instead of it becoming just this, I'm following this trail that that was here before to get from one end to the other. I'm going to be like, oh, I'm going to have some fun with this and kind of make my cross country ride like my own trail. And I can probably confidently say, like, no one's taken the exact route that I've taken across the because I linked up so many different routes. So anyway,
well, and I almost would consider it maybe a tiny bit of fear, because when you're hiking the Appalachian Trail, you have signs, and it's probably you have to force yourself to get off the trail and get lost, or maybe just make some really silly mistakes. But when you're biking across the United States, you have roads everywhere, and as you get into a town, you can probably deviate from your route without even realizing it. And then the next thing you know, you're 20 miles the wrong way, or I don't know if that happened to you, but that's something that I would think about when I was, if I was pedaling across.
Yeah. Yeah. It adds that extra layer of complexity of
Mm-hmm.
figuring out your
Mm-hmm.
own maps in this different way. Yeah. So
And were you mostly on pavement or trails, or how did that work?
yeah, mostly roads, a lot of state highways
Mm.
that weren't pretty crazy. There were some sketchy, high speed, high traffic areas, but I'd say most of the time it was like low traffic county and country roads or
Mm-hmm.
county roads from the majority of the time. I did do some rails to trails linked up onto the Katy Trail in Missouri, which is all limestone, and then of
Mm-hmm.
course on the Gap where I met you guys.
Yeah.
And some other like the Panhandle to the Montour Trail, which just short trails like right before the Gap.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, most of the time I was on highways.
Okay. And
And I was on the interstate actually for a very brief period of time
oh
too.
wow, that sounds
So
a little
it,
a
it,
little
it
sketch.
it's the weird it's the weird thing with the official Trans Am route. It actually puts like the official route puts you on the interstate for this very small section of time, and so that I I think the Trans Am does need some updating. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's a little dated. I don't know, traffic patterns have changed, whatnot, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um,
Well, and speaking of change, when we ran into you, we were worrying about, rightfully so, a hurricane coming through our area.
yeah,
So you sounds like you've had more than one obstacle when you talk about fires and smoke, and then I assume that the hurricane affected you as well.
yeah, it really did. So the hurricane definitely changed my route. So I was on the Gap and ready to go all the way through Pennsylvania on the C&O as well,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was going to find my way up to New Jersey and New York City, where I eventually finished at home in my apartment. But everyone told me, dude, don't go on the Sino. It'll be way too gnarly. It'll be like way too muddy, and it's not that well maintained, and you're just gonna have a really hard time on that bike of yours if you try to do the Sino after multiple days of buckets of rain.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to jump on the highways again, and thankfully Pennsylvania has the nice like what do you call it, like the PAS route, or the like they just have like all these bike routes throughout the state that take you different places.
Oh, okay.
And it was really sweet. Ended up just taking that route until yeah, I mean it was totally crazy, yeah, biking through some of that rain. But the big day when Hurricane Ida was passing through, or at least the last remnants of it, I ended up kind of holed up in this motel in Breezewood, where I just stayed an extra night and didn't bike one entire day because it was just pouring buckets the entire day.
Oh, yeah.
But then after that, it was fine. But yeah, I was that I it slowed me down too. I wanted to finish 2 days sooner, but I ended up taking that extra day that I didn't necessarily want to take off
Yeah.
because there's a hurricane. Yeah.
And so you were definitely, you mentioned, wanting to get back to hanging out with your girlfriend, and so you were thinking about getting the miles done. Do you recall what your total mileage was?
Yeah. So my total mileage was 3,965 miles total, which is about 6,300 kilometers.
Hmm.
So I was pretty bummed when I calculated everything up. Like I tracked everything on Strava, and I ended up getting just like barely under 4,000 miles. So that was a little bit of a bummer. But I mean, granted, with all of the side mileage and stuff like that, I'm sure I got over 4,000
Yeah,
miles.
that's actually pretty
That I didn't
funny.
track.
I would probably be the same way, where I would add it all up and be like, "What? I
Yeah,
missed it by less than a mile." But
yeah,
what can you do? And you still have, you're celebrating something that very few people can say that they can do or would do.
yeah. I was really grateful to be able to do the whole thing for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And how did you make ends meet, like financially? Like, were you working along the way, or did you save up, or were you dumpster diving, or what?
No, yeah, I had saved up the money. Yeah, so I had the whole summer off from work, which I was super stoked on, and yeah, just saved up money and just no budget, just eating all the gas station food as like all the restaurants, and just trying to, I don't know. I was just like a lot of parts of my ride were super uncomfortable, and so whenever I had a chance to eat something nice, then I let myself, kind of eat. I ate out a lot.
Yeah. Do you recall any favorite places that you pedaled through?
Okay, so many. The Oregon coast was beautiful. It was absolutely gorgeous, and I met so many cool other cyclists who were also doing the Oregon coast. They made that so much fun. I'd also say the Boise National Forest and Banks, Idaho. So this is when I veered off of the Trans Am for the first time, and I cut across the Sawtooth Range. So I mentioned my dad is a geographer. I asked him, "Hey, Dad, can you put together some route from point A to point B for me? Like, get me back on the Trans Am, but I need to skip Montana because unfortunately it's smoked out." And so he's like, "Oh yeah, you are going to go through the Sawtooth Range to get to Grand Teton National Park," which is where I connected back with the Trans Am route. And I was so glad I did that. The Sawtooth Range was gorgeous, and Banks, Idaho it's like right before the Sawtooth Range, I think. But I was so impressed. Like, I wish I could have spent a whole day there, but I was just going in and out. There were like right away. So there's like this one tiny little cafe at the bottom of, I forget what the name of the river was, but it's just this massive canyon, tons of kayakers and white water rafters pass through there, and super sketchy on a bike. Like very few people, I'm sure, like bike down this canyon, but I was one of them. And like right away when I jumped into this cafe in Banks, Idaho, just the vibe and the environment in that cafe was like so cool. Like right away, all those people, you could tell they were out there just for fun, summer adventure, and so much fun. So that was really great. So yeah, and also I mentioned another favorite place, Teton National Park.
Oh yeah,
and which was gorgeous. The smoke did catch up to me a little bit on day one. I was in Teton National Park, and then when I woke up the following morning, I camped out at Jenny Lake, which was beautiful, one of the campgrounds there at Teton National Park. And I woke up the next morning, and the smoke was completely gone. It was like the clearest day Teton National Park has like seen in like the whole year or whatever it was. Someone was saying it's like the clearest day they've seen in a long time. And I woke up and was just stunned. Like I was right underneath the mountains, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And so that was a great moment. Let's see. I went through Fort Collins, Colorado, and I really loved that town. Took huge advantage of the Warm Showers community, and that was one of my favorite Warm Showers stays. Our host there took us out to his favorite brewery, and like there were like 30 something breweries in just that whole town of Fort Collins, and so the craft beer scene was really cool there. And I was cycling with a buddy that I met actually in Wyoming, and we biked almost all of Wyoming together.
Oh, cool. And for people who don't know, Warm Showers is it's actually an app, isn't it? That people can give up part of their homes, a bedroom or a backyard, and host cyclists who are coming through. And typically there's no charge associated with it. And you can find them online as you are traveling through. So I'm assuming that's how you found those places.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's just like couch surfing, but specifically for bike tourists and people who like bike tourists. There is there's a charge to use the app, unfortunately. Well, fortunately they keep it open, whatever. But it's cheap. Yeah. You don't have to pay like the hosts or anything if you don't want to. Yeah.
And if you get lucky, like you did, you get a tour of the community and stop at a brewery or two.
Oh man, yeah. No, that whole community I owe so much to. You sign up for Warm Showers with the promise of eventually paying it forward, and so I hope to host cyclists too eventually who maybe they're beginning or ending a ride in New York City and they need a place to crash. I don't know how comfortable they'll be in my tiny 1-bedroom apartment, but
but think of the stories you guys could share.
I know. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about some crazy things. You've already mentioned, fires and hurricanes and meeting crazy people in a bar in Confluence. But any other crazy things that are worth mentioning?
There was just so much. Well, I'll say one positive one and one negative one, maybe. So again, with the just the amount of generosity that I experienced felt crazy to me. Like I
Mm.
was shocked that all these people were just so stoked on helping me out and like so willing to just give an arm and a leg to feed me,
Mm.
or like I got free breakfast at so many different cafes. I got like in best example was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I was so close. It was like my second to last day or my third to last, or it was probably my second to last day.
Hmm.
No, third to last day or something, whatever. But I arrived to Lancaster at this bike shop because my brakes were feeling soft, and so I needed them to kind of look at them. And right away they could tell, oh, like, wow, dude, you look pretty messed up. What have you been doing riding across the country? I'm like, yep, actually exactly what I've been doing. And so pretty soon they were just asking me all these questions and I was telling stories, and customers in the store stopped their shopping and they were like turned and listened to me telling my stories, and some customer gave me $20 and just like, and then I asked the bike shop owners like, hey, what's a good place to eat here? And they're like, oh, try this place downtown. And I went there, and so the bike shop owners apparently knew everyone in the town, and they sent the message forward that I was gonna eat there that night. And so the chef came out, shook my hand, or like the owner of the restaurant came out, shook my hand, like, hey, meals on the guys at Hush Money Bikes. That's the name. So huge shout out to them. So like they paid for my meal, they paid for my
Wow.
drinks,
Yeah.
and then yeah, it was amazing. And then fall, and I also had a warm shower stay that night too. It was just like this amazing combination of beautiful generosity. And then the following morning, word spread that I was like this cross country cyclist about to finish. And so there was this farmer's market that I went to the following morning, and tons of people there knew who I was. Like I just felt like a celebrity in this small little town, and was just felt like just left that town on top of the world. And I soon after finished my trip. It was amazing. So yeah, just
Wow.
the craziness surrounding just people are really, really amazing. And I felt so grateful and so indebted to all the nice people that I met,
Yeah.
and who gave me so yeah, so that honestly was amazing. I guess a couple really bad like crazy things. I got stung by a bee
Mm.
in Illinois, and I have never had an allergic reaction or anything bad with a bee sting, but I ended up getting hives all over my body,
Oh
and
no.
it was like dove into this really bad allergic reaction, and was super scared for a minute, but I like quickly bought Benadryl, and like just like this really bad pain just
Mm.
for one night that felt pretty uncomfortable.
Mm.
I had a lot of gear failures, so I was really grateful that I didn't carry as like a lot of things on my bike, but I wish I had carried a better tent. I didn't know that biking long distance is like you can do with having more weight on your bike than like say when you're hiking. It's best to have a lightweight pack and
Mm. Sure. Right.
keep. Yeah. So in Missouri, what was that state park called? A state park in Missouri. I was camping, and I have this kind of tarp tarp shelter set up that I would stake out and tie to a tree and tie to my bike, and I created kind of like this A-frame tarp that I would pitch as my tent. And so there was no bug netting, which sucked. I like ended up I don't know, and multiple other times during the trip I wish I had at least some bug netting to protect me from bugs while I was camping. But this one occasion it just started pouring, just thunderstorm, the type of thunderstorm where they on in the state park, like they turned on the horn or their PA system, and they were like, "Hey, everyone, heads up, we have a big storm coming. Hope you have good shelter.
Oh,
Bye."
hope you hope you have more than a tarp.
Yeah, but woke up in the middle of the night, and I was just kind of and water was just seeping underneath me, and I knew immediately that like I was not gonna be protected at all from the rest of this rain. And so I got up, packed all my stuff up. A lot of it got wet, and but I had still like, it was like not even the middle of the night. It was like 10 p.m. and it was just pouring rain. And so I ended up sleeping in laundry room of this campground until the following morning, and then I left, and that was that.
And I'm guessing that was not your best night of sleep.
No. And after that, I was like, screw this. I'm just gonna like send back home my camping stuff and like most of my camping stuff, and I'm just gonna stay in motels for the rest of the trip. And so at that point, I like hardened my mentality even more, because I was like, okay, because at some points during the trip, I wanted it to be this fun, relaxing, good adventure. But it ended up turning into a really at times a really uncomfortable, just like endurance event of just biking all day and missing my girlfriend like crazy and being uncomfortable,
right.
and being next to cars on the highway all the time, and just I was like ready to be done multiple times on the trip. I'm glad I never quit, but I was like really beat down at multiple different points of the trip. And so at this point, I was just like, I just need to, like, this camping gear is not serving me at all. Like, if it's not going to serve, like, if it's not going to protect me during like a rainstorm, then it's useless. So I like sent it home, and just like, I'm just going to stay in motels and warm showers the rest of the time, and just finish this as soon as I can. And
you want to be able to just like, you want to be able to enjoy yourself a tiny bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I guess I just wanted to turn up the miles like right away, and just finish as soon as I could. It was a kind of a bummer, because I knew I wanted to have a fun trip, but the way that I don't know, I guess I just wanted to see how far I could go at this point, and then I was like, I don't need any more weight to take me down. Right. So, and even though I really almost had nothing. So
when you look back, like, and I don't know if you can actually think about this, but you know, the JD before biking across the United States versus the JD now, do you feel like, you know, I'm assuming you had a physical transformation because all you did all day was bike and, you know, eat when you can. But how about the mental side of JD? Do you have a marked change? A quick interruption to give a shout out to Primal Wear. Cycling is their passion and apparel is their craft. So if you're in the market for a new jersey, bibs, mask, or any cycling apparel, go to primalwear.com and use code PRIMALMURPH to get 20% off your purchase. Yes, 20% off. Now back to the show.
Not as big as I think I wanted. The Appalachian Trail for me was my kind of turning point in my life, where that trip was very much like a spiritual, emotional, mental kind of shift. And right before the bike trip too, I underwent like this huge personal life kind of like faith transformation. And just like all sorts of things that like I wasn't expecting to that would happen to me when I moved to New York City, like the year prior. And I just didn't really experience a huge life change as I was biking. Maybe I had undergone enough change for the time, for like the I don't know, that 2-3 year period that I was kind of doing all those things. But it solidified, I guess, this relationship that I have with I don't know, pursuing big goals, whatever it may be. It did harden my, you know, like mentality towards I don't know, just like not quitting things when things got hard. And I was really like I definitely grew, certainly, but I think what I missed out on was that same spiritual transformation that I went through when I hiked the Appalachian Trail. And unfortunately, I think that was the nature of the ride that I chose, being on highways a lot and just being next to cars and never really feeling like I was completely in nature at any given point. I mean, I loved the camping and, you know, being especially on the rails and trails or anything like that, but the majority of the time I never felt like I left civilization, and I never felt truly alone or at peace.
And I think all of us as cyclists can agree with you that there is a bit of feeling uncomfortable when there's traffic around at all times, no matter how hard you try.
That's definitely something that it made the trip less than it could have been. Like now in the future, like I want to do more big bike trips, but I don't know if I want to do them on roads. Like I would love to do the Tour Divide and just be like on a mountain bike for months at a time, and just bike pack on it and just do stuff like that.
That actually Tour Divide sounds exactly your speed, pace, your, being able to see nature. Like you should, I hope that's on your bucket list.
It is definitely. Yeah, I'd love to do that at some point.
Do you want to, we've kind of hinted around at what you've had on your bike, but do you want to share with the listeners just a little bit about your bike setup and your gear setup?
Yeah, sure. So my bike was a 1986 Schwinn World Sport, this old steel Firehouse red road bike that it was just not the bike for the job, but it was the bike that I had and it fit me. It was a 69 centimeter frame. It was absolutely massive. I'm 6'9", and so I just needed a bike that sort of fit me, and this one was that bike. And I had gotten it tuned up, but it was in pretty, like, a lot of the parts were stock parts from the 80s that like were on the bike at the time. So it was an old school rig. My gear setup, I had all Revolute Designs bags, and so I had like a half of a frame bag that covered half my frame. I had 2 of their mountain feed bags at the cockpit, which are like they're like look like water bottle holders that are upright at your handlebars. Let's see. I also had the Spine Lock seat bag, which hooked up behind my seat. I also had like a small bag up there is right below my seat that I attached on top of my frame. So yeah, I had like those 5 bike bags, and then I would just tie my jackets along the frame whenever, like, because I mean, at one point I carried a sweater and a rain jacket, and those didn't really fit in the bags along with everything else. And so I just kind of tied them to the side of my bike while I was riding.
And for the most part, you had minimal clothing, right?
Yeah, no, I only had 1 pair of bike shorts, 1 jersey. I wore that same outfit every day.
Wow.
I had 2 pairs of socks. My shoes, I clipped in road shoes, which was a mistake. I definitely should have opted for like mountain bike shoes that I could have walked on, or because there were sections where I had to walk or whatnot. And I had a jacket, a sweater, rain jacket, my camping gear, which consisted of a down quilt. I was rated down to 22 degrees, which was way too warm. I had my tarp that I eventually got rid of. Some stakes for that. I didn't have any like bike bottles. I only had smart water plastic bottles.
Oh, that you just refilled,
yeah, I just refilled and filled up with soda from the fountain and Gatorade and water all the time. What else? Oh, and I had a water filter. I had a small pump. I had some CO2 canisters, some basic necessity bike stuff, a couple tubes, bike tool, lights, rear and front lights, sunscreen, bear spray. I carried bear spray through from the beginning to, I guess, after the Tetons. I ditched that. And someone gave me their bear spray, someone who was finishing the Trans Am. Like my first campsite, on the Oregon coast, I met someone who was finishing the Trans Am the following day. And he was giving me all sorts of pointers, and he was like, take my bear spray, and he's like, you definitely need some more gear. Like, you don't look like you have enough gear to do this thing. And I actually ended up, he scared me a little bit. And so I actually ended up asking my mom to send me like a sweater and some leggings from home. because like I should probably have those. And so she sent those to me, and I eventually picked those up.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a weird question. Did you finish your ride and throw away all your clothes or your one outfit that you wore every day, or is it now like in a frame on the wall?
I still have them.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they're in my, I don't know, they're just in my closet. I haven't hung out with my frame or done anything like that.
Yeah.
They're still it's still my only bike jersey and my only pair of bike shorts. So whenever I go on a big bike ride now, that's what I wear.
Same ones. Wow.
I really should get those replaced.
Well, looking forward, you mentioned that you have been on a bike since, but what adventures do you have on the horizon, maybe for 2022?
Well, 2022, I'm getting married, so that's a big adventure.
Hey, so that girlfriend is going to be your wife, huh?
Yeah, so that's awesome.
That's super awesome.
But in terms of like physical adventures, like I'm healing up my injury still completely. Ended up being a little just a little worse than I was getting on.
Mm-hmm.
And so still kind of rehabbing that PT and stuff. But eventually I want to get back into running and run some more ultra marathons and maybe a Spartan race and other fun things. But so no big bike or hikes this year. But next year, yeah, I would love to hike the Long Path in New York, which is a 300-mile hike from the north tip of Manhattan to the Adirondack Mountains.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I'd love to do that. And then maybe I'd love to do the whole Gap Encino with my fiance and kind of get back and do that whole section of biking would be super fun to do.
Yeah. And have you put the PCT back on your list?
It is on the list, but it's not coming up anytime soon.
Sure.
Unfortunately, yeah. Just with everything that's been going on and ramping up my career and getting married, it's going to be on the back burner, I think, for a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. Well, awesome, JD. It's been so fun kind of catching up with you, and I'm so proud to know somebody that has completed this, epic adventure of riding across the United States.
Yeah, well, best of luck on your trip coming up.
Yeah,
you're doing the Southern Tier.
I'm doing the Southern Tier in actually we're leaving in about 4 weeks. So I am
insane.
Looking forward to it. And I do not have the mindset to wear the same thing every day. So I'm really trying to work on what I'm going to do. Like, can I wear the same thing every day? I should be able to, but so I'm going to, try and use some of what you've told me today as inspiration to see if I can, downsize my bike bags.
Oh, well, yeah, no worries. Yeah. Sorry if I hope this interview was fun. And
oh my gosh, it was excellent. Yeah. So JD, is there a way that we can, follow along on the route that you did complete?
Yes. So as I said, I did track all my rides on Strava every day. And so I ended up piecing together all the GPX data for that and put it on Gaia GPS. So I could send you the link to that and you can put it in your show notes or something if you want to do that.
Perfect.
So people could check that out.
Sure.
But also people, if they wanted to, could follow me on Strava. I could link that as well, I guess. I don't really post a ton of things right now, but
yeah.
They could see pictures and stuff.
Yeah, it'd be great to kind of see what your journey was all about.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much, JD.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, listeners, that's it for this week. If you're interested in learning more about my bike tour across the U.S., go to my website, which is murphologypodcast.com, and click on the tab labeled Murphs Biking the U.S. Email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com if you have a topic or the name of a cyclist you find interesting. Support my podcast at patreon.com/murphology and visit both my Facebook and Instagram pages for daily entertainment. Also, a quick shout out to Simmons Electric for sponsoring this episode. I have more great episodes in the pipeline, so I hope you continue to be a Murphology podcast listener. Thank you.